I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I haven't got caught at it yet.
Welcome to Akihabara, anime central of the world. But it wasn't always this way. Let's look back at the history of Akihabara. The very first big step for Akihabara was in 1925, when the Akihabara train station was opened. Of course, there being a train station meant that people came. This ended up leading to a lot of fruit and vegetables wholesalers showing up, and even a black market. The next big step for Akihabara would come in the 1940s, right after World War II. With many soldiers returning from the war, many engineers and mechanics unfortunately found themselves out of work. With so few jobs available, this led to a lot of engineers gathering at Akihabara. Of course, at the time, the only real entertainment was radio. This would lead these engineers to turning Akihabara into a one-stop shop for radios. You could fix your radio, you could make a radio, and you could even buy a radio. This essentially helped Akihabara become the place in Tokyo you'd come to essentially get technology. Another humongous step would start at the end of the 70s and the start of the 80s with the start of the home computer. Based on this clip from Thames, you can actually get some real good look at how Akihabara was in the 80s. My god, I don't think I know a more British sound than that.
Full blast. And as you can well imagine, being Japan, most of the activity here is centred on selling electric and electronic goods in this sort of form, street market form. In fact, this is the equivalent of those shops and stores we used to have in Britain back in the 50s and 60s, the sort of place where you might buy old radio valves or defunct radio chassis.
So, Akihabara had become some amazing place where people would essentially come to buy technology, or of course come to these little markets and buy pieces for tech. Actually got so bad, as you can see in this video, they actually started to get worried that people would actually start selling stuff to the Soviets.
No one's asked me where I'm from. For all this nice lady and gentleman know, I could be a Russian spy exporting that bit of hardware to do something devious with it. And indeed, there have been reports that members of the Afghanistan resistance have been here to buy this kind of hardware to do exactly that with it.
In a weird way, Akihabara couldn't quite shake away its black market days that started way back in the 1920s. Check out this guy. He's literally just selling copies of Apple's computers.
Hey, it looks like it does the same job. You've copied it.
No.
What's the difference?
The big difference between a copy and a compatible machine is its looks.
I like later on in this exact same interview, the gentleman is asked what he's doing is illegal, and I think his response is this needs to be seen.
Doing?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I haven't got caught at it yet.
I see.
I just love the fact that this man went on a national television station and said, hey, what I'm doing is probably not illegal, but yeah, the companies haven't found out yet. Sadly, this gentleman's shop is no longer in Akihabara. Rest in peace, Giga Chad. You just wanted to flex. Next would come the 1990s and the rise of otaku culture. Otaku, of course, being the Japanese word for nerd. This was in part thanks to 1995 of the debut of the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion. Now yes, there have been other anime series where there was a lot of merchandise for it, but Evangelion's popularity was so popular, they just ended up just liking pretty much every single piece of merchandise you could ever think for Evangelion. This would lead to a sort of industry standard that there would just be a lot more merchandise for a lot more anime series. This would lead to shops like Anime opening in 1997. From there, it just seemed to snowball, going into the 2000s. More and more anime shops would open up in Akihabara. Also in the early 2000s was the start of maid cafes. These are essentially cafes where girls would dress up in maid outfits and call you things like Sir and Master. Of course, we got such maid cafes as Maid a Dreamin', Maid a Dreamin', Maid a Dreamin'. Trust me, if you've been to Akihabara, you have heard that theme song. And of course, this would turn Akihabara into the place where you'd find lots of otaku. And here's footage of British TV presenter Jonathan Ross harassing random people in Japan. I'm actually showing this footage because this is actually probably the first time I ever saw Akihabara on television. In a 2006 episode of Japanorama, this was the sort of time where the Japanese government looked at Akihabara and like, yes, let's promote this as the place where all the anime stuff happens. And it worked. But sadly, at big cost. Of course, with the anime boom happening, unfortunately, this was bad news for, I guess, anyone who probably wasn't really doing anime in Akihabara. With space becoming sparse and rents going up, this would unfortunately leave a lot of businesses having to leave Akihabara. This would lead to a lot of the tech stores having to shut down. Of course, a lot of these places had history from the 1950s, and there was even people that literally were there since Akihabara started as a radio town. It was actually really sad to see a lot of these places go. And yes, there is actually still a few of these little shops around, and I actually do recommend if you had the opportunity to go around these little markets and take in, I guess, the true origins of Akihabara. And remember, if it wasn't for stalls like this, there probably would not be this humongous anime town here. And I guess that brings us up to present day. I just felt like we just needed a quick little history at Akihabara before I started showing you around. I got plenty of cool little things to show in Akihabara, from shops to neat little gimmicky things I found, even restaurants in Akihabara. Yeah, Akihabara is actually a really amazing place. I will admit it is a bit of a tourist trap, but yeah, it's still a lot of fun. There's still stuff you can only find here and here alone. So yeah, in the next few weeks we will have plenty of videos on Timothy in Japan to do with Akihabara. So please just do make sure to click that subscribe button.